Hey everyone, welcome back to the old dining room, and we've got another fun video for you. We're hanging out with Joe at his new homestead. This is part 2 of his tour, so if you haven't seen part 1, please make sure you check it out. I'll leave a link to that video in the description below. This video is going to be all about his propagation area, and he gives us a little tour, some of his favorite plants. He even shows us how he planted his asparagus, which I found super interesting, and I hope you do too. Let's jump right into this video and have him show us around.
There is the high tunnel that I was just inside, and you can see out here I've got a lot going on. There's a lot happening everywhere. This is the forest context I was describing, and this land was logged pretty aggressively, nearly clear cut of whatever was choice at the time in, I believe, the late 90s. The trees that were growing here in this spot were pretty scrappy, and you can see I've got some roots here, things like this. This is smaller than average, but not a whole lot of relatively large or healthy trees here, because this forest was actually not managed. And I can go into greater detail about what I've learned that implies now, but you can see some of the logs that I'm still waiting to process and put on the sawmill and turn into lumber are waiting right here for me to, eventually get the time to get them over there. But the focus of this will be this kind of garden space here. Now understand, this is the second day in June. The majority of the planting has only been happening for the past 2 weeks. And remember, the context here is nursery and propagation interspersed with seed saving and short-term food security. We have an asparagus trench of second-year asparagus. The trench is 36 feet long, and it looks like I'm having a pretty high uptake of the predominantly Mary Washington. I love asparagus, and I think it's a really, really, really important homestead plant. The asparagus roots need to be buried a few inches below the surface of the ground. Some people say 6, some people say 8. I went with 4.5. The dirt that I dug out of this trench where the asparagus are beginning to propagate, I put over here and I planted potatoes in. I'm bringing dirt not from this location incrementally over the weeks, and throwing a little more in here, a little more in here, eventually to get the trench to be just a little bit shallower than the ground around it. And then what will happen is, after all this asparagus is pretty strong, it's put on its best growth it's going to do for this year, I'm going to carefully pile several inches of wood chips on top of this, and boom. Next year, I also cannot eat this asparagus, but in 2024, I'll be eating this asparagus. I've got 4 different variety of potatoes growing because I would like a diversity to increase resilience. And this right here, I believe, is the purple Kennebec variety. This, I don't remember. This might be a Yukon Gold. I'm not sure. But the potatoes are so far taking to the soil really well. And by soil, I should say substrate. I did a soil test of the earth here, and it came back absolutely abysmally bad. And so I'm quite frankly shocked that plants are so far growing and doing well. You can see I got some more wood chips. I have little wood chip piles kind of dotted all over the landscape here. I have some charcoal biochar right here, and I am occasionally mixing it in with the soil, because one of the things, the pH here is incredibly low. The nominal pH of the soil here is 4.5, and it appears as if the forest here, the trees, seem to really extract a lot of energy from the soil. I planted this only a week and a half ago, and I'm very happy with this. This is already harvestable pak choi. I really enjoy it. You'll see that I've been dotting the landscape with Swiss chard. Red Gardens, another really good channel on YouTube, has kind of really turned my mind around about Swiss chard. I usually wouldn't even grow it because it takes up a lot of space and I don't really enjoy it. But in Red's video, they went on to show that chard was actually one of the highest producing plants that was available to them in their context. And so I'm going to give it a shot. So I'm going to have about 12.5 chard plants. And I don't really care for the way that Swiss chard tastes, but I will try to force myself to love it if it really winds up being that productive for me. Now we're over here kind of getting into what I'm going to call more of the propagation area. If you see things that look like little bags and things like that laying around, these are either the bags that the plants were purchased in, or they're bags I wrote a marker on to write what the particular specific plant is. As soon as I have time to make aluminum labels, I'll be labeling everything. I guess I'll start from right over here. More Swiss chard and onions, of course. Rhubarb, and I believe this is a black raspberries are right here. And yes, I know that everything is planted really close together, but remember, this is for propagation, not a permanent location. So I'm hoping that all these raspberries put out 100 suckers next year in the spring, and I'm chasing them all over the place, and I'm just wrecking this landscape as I'm pulling all these plants that I have propagated and planting them into much larger areas for them to grow. We have a white currant and a black currant. We have more black raspberries. I believe a red currant. And the thing I'm most excited about is this. This is my elderberry, and it was very difficult for me to find this. I purchased, I believe, 5 elderberry cuttings. Just these little, I just had these little sticks, and I did not think they were going to grow. It was the only way I could find any elderberry. For the past 2.5 years, it's been almost impossible to get. I did not believe that it was going to survive. And sure enough, it is taking off, and it looks like it's already beginning to propagate itself. And I was not even aware that I had probably thrown a couple pieces of discarded root over here, and they're taking off. Elderberry appears to love this context and love this landscape, and I try not to touch it too much, but I'm just so impressed with the growth of this. Blueberries, Nanking cherry, I don't think it's going to make it. Blueberries, blueberries, blueberries. So from a very good nursery called Cummins Nursery in near Ithaca, New York, I ordered 9 fruit trees. I planted them, and I have been taking very little care of them, and they seem to be doing really, really well. I tried to give these apple trees a lot more space. However, my plan, like I've said, is to get a really healthy small nursery orchard going and to be able to propagate, because these are some of my favorite varieties, to be able to propagate cuttings from this onto rootstock or tip budding, which I'm not good at, but I need to learn now. This is what I believe to be a wild blackcap, and this grows everywhere here, wherever the ground gets disturbed. I'm letting it go to verify that's in fact what it is, and if it is, I'm going to propagate this as well. You can see here, this was actually a previously deceased tree, I think, from the previous logging, and you'll see there's just roots, and there's just messes, and there's half decayed trees from old logging. It's just an absolute mess around here. And guess what? I'm working with it. I'm leaving almost everything as it is, and I'm just trying to just knife and tuck and dig into this landscape the kind of diversity of food that I need to sustain myself. I've already started adding little features like this to try to encourage the amphibians to begin showing up here and rampaging this garden by night, and hopefully keeping the slugs down and other insects that would otherwise be eating my garden. This right here is kind of an interesting experiment. This is a very amateur Hugelculture mound, and I dug a trench about 2.5, 3 feet wide and about 3 feet deep, put the soil off to the side, and I filled it with stumps and roots and old rotten logs. I put the dirt back on it, and then I just threw seeds into it, and I've also been propagating these raspberries into it. I threw a bunch of sunflower seeds into it, and this is where I have been bringing the cuttings, the suckers from the raspberries inside the high tunnel. I've been poking them into this hill, and they're not happy, they're struggling, but they are making it. I built a small solar kiln, which I'm not even using, sadly. I need to be using it shortly so I can kiln dry wood that I mill for flooring.
I think that that's a great place to stop for part 2 of his tour, because part 3 is going to be really cool. We're going to see some of the fun tools that Joe has as he processes some of the wood on the property and builds this outdoor pergola and other structures on the property. Really exciting stuff, and it was so much fun to edit these videos. I hope you are enjoying them as much as I am. Please make sure if you have any questions or comments or anything that you want to talk to Joe about, leave them in the comment section below this video. I'll compile them all after the tours are done, and I'll try to set up a nice little live Q&A with Joe at his homestead. So make sure you subscribe to this channel if you're into this sort of stuff. And also, I'm going to be doing all sorts of fun things in my garden, in the kitchen, and I'd love to have you along with me. Check out all the information in the description below if you're interested in helping support Mockingbird Farm Sanctuary, which I'm the co-founder of. And I will see you in another video. Have a great rest of the week, my friends.